A very good evening to you with the Tuesday, February 27th edition of the CBC Evening News. I'm Ryan Broom. In our top story, Barbados has become the latest Caribbean state to sign the CARICOM Arrest Warrant Treaty. Prime Minister Freundel Stuart inked the treaty on behalf of the island during the second day of the 29th intersessional meeting of CARICOM heads of government in Haiti. The CARICOM Arrest Warrant Treaty, already signed by some other CARICOM member countries, simplifies the procedure of returning fugitives to the country where charges have been laid. Prime Minister Stuart also signed the revised agreement establishing the Caribbean Examinations Council. That agreement seeks to update the CXC's legal structure in light of subsequent organizational practices, recent market developments, and current needs, with particular emphasis on accommodating requests from additional territories and institutions to join or otherwise participate in the CXC. Well, in other news, the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation is set to receive a $9.2 million cash injection from government. The money, according to Acting Prime Minister Richard Seeley, was provided to ensure CBC meets its commitments, especially to overseas suppliers of channels which subscribers of multi-choice television enjoy. His comments came as he led off debate on a supplementary to grant the sums of money for service of the island. The funds will come from the Consolidated Fund. Mr. Seeley says CBC is still a government-owned entity, and with the advent of technology, broadcasting has changed.
CBC, in terms of its planning for the future, cannot ignore that reality, and we need to do that. Of course, the difference between what is required for the overseas suppliers, as I said, 3.8 million US, which is 7.6 Barbados. There's another 2.1, which is required for some other local commitments to subcontractors, utility companies, etc. And that is what makes up the $9.2 million.
Minister of Housing Dennis Cameron wants to see CBC get involved in more local programming. He says the TV station has played a significant role in informing the public over the years. Mr. Cameron says the supplementary is nothing new.
I must admit, the support in terms of dollars and cents has not been as great under this administration as it had been under the previous administration. And I'm glad that this administration was able to allow CBC to get deeper involved in multi-choice television so as to erase the losses. And I think it's very important for us to continue to speak about losses, because once we speak about losses and not deficits, then it means that CBC would know that they either have to increase their revenue or decrease their expenditure.
Minister of Finance Chris Sinclair says CBC is operating at a financial disadvantage against its competitors and illegal providers. He says CBC has highlighted its concerns of the provision of concessions to telecoms providers, which places it at a disadvantage.
Which allow them to get certain bits of equipment free of cost. Well, not free of cost, but free of the impositions, which the standard impositions, which CBC itself has to pay. So there are some entities who, through the use of the Telecoms Act, can get their set-top boxes free of duties at the port, but CBC, who have to get the MCTV box, which because CBC is not covered under the Telecommunications Act because it does not provide those services, has to pay duty on theirs. So they're immediately, again, at a financial disadvantage.
And Mr. Sinclair notes that aside from MCTV, advertising, another revenue stream, has been affected as advertisers move to other platforms.
People who would have gone to a traditional provider and taken out an ad on one of the broadcast networks of CBC, one of the channels, or even on the television, now don't need to do that, because they can go on other platforms and advertise. So again, now you're losing advertising revenue in significant amounts. Less people listen now to radio to get their information. Less people watch TV other than the evening news.
Minister of Culture Stephen Lashley says not enough focus is placed on the playing of local music on Barbados' radio stations. This, he says, is despite repeated calls.
Our local radio stations are really, by and large, doing an injustice to the encouragement that is required for local music. There is, of course, the current requirement for local radio stations to play, I believe it's 60% Caribbean content, but I believe that that is really observed more in the breach than anything else. And I think the opportunity is here for a restructured CBC to zoom in on this particular opportunity.
Mr. Lashley agrees that CBC, due to its huge national obligation, has incurred significant costs. He says the decision to appoint the CBC as a host national broadcaster for Carry Festa was a good one. According to him, there's a wide array of digitized local content, and he wants the TV station to align itself with a growing market.
I believe that the market for local content is really there. And once CBC is able to find a way of how to access and to give vent to local content, then it will actually mean certainly the difference between operating in a very tight fiscal situation as the company is currently operating in, as opposed to finding ways to be able to make use of this local content. The market for authentic Barbadian film, we believe, is extremely attractive.
And Minister of Industry Donville Innes suggests government may have to look at the role of the Government Information Service and the CBC to determine what's the best fit.
Is it necessary to maintain two separate entities like that? Or can we find a way in which perhaps we combine the efforts? I'm not necessarily talking about the merger of a state agency and government department like that, but certainly to ask the question, what is the best means in which we can disseminate information from the state to the citizens and others in the country? Is it by having government information services currently structured? Is it by having CBC as currently structured? Or is there a way in which we can find the appropriate structure?
In other House news, government has moved to restore the reverse tax credit to $1,300. Finance Minister Chris Sinclair says this will benefit Barbadians earning less than $25,000 a year. He says while the economy is not where it should be, there have been some improvements, especially in the area of increased revenue. Mr. Sinclair has made it clear that the move is not an election gimmick, and he was moving the second reading of the Income Tax Amendment Bill 2018.
Revenue Authority and the Ministry of Finance, and of course with the approval of the Cabinet, have approved for this to be done. It wasn't just done overnight. As some people would want to suggest, it's only being done because of the election. This was done many, many months ago. We're waiting on the paperwork to be completed. It is now completed. It is here. And we see absolutely no reason why it shouldn't be done. Of course, the reverse tax credit is paid on a per annum basis on an income year. And therefore, it becomes effective from income year 2017. And therefore, you can pay, it would be effective income year 2018, because once we pass this legislation, income year 2017 will be the first year of assessment. And once, like now, once you do your filings come April, you can file for your income year 2017 and receive your reverse tax credit payments.
In giving her support to the move, United Progressive Party MP for Christchurch West, Dr. Maria Agard, says government must do more to assist the most vulnerable in society.
We need to look at the possibility of even taking it further and making sure that we make up for those lost years. If we don't do it in this year, it should be a credit where we do it in other years as our revenues increase and we are performing better economically.
In other news, police officers and magistrates will soon be occupying new facilities with the opening of the Cane Garden Police Station and courts in St. Thomas. Lisa Lord was there and filed this report.
The spanking new $13 million facility, though not fully completed, was opened to much fanfare yesterday. The 12,000 square meter facility will house a police station and both the District D and F magistrates' courts. Attorney General and Minister of Home Affairs Adriel Brathwaite says the police station is the first of its kind to have a full custody suite.
If we want to house someone for their own protection, that I believe it can accommodate at least 3 individuals, fully contained. And it is our hope that in any future facilities that we will do similar because it makes a lot of sense. It's one of the challenges that we have from time to time. And we tend, in particular, radio family conflict situations, we tend to use one NGO in particular. So if possible, we could have our own facilities across Barbados. That would be of tremendous benefit to us.
Chief Justice Sir Marston Gibson says magistrates are critical to the justice system and some have been forced to work in uncomfortable conditions for too long.
I am always grateful for the magistrates who have to work in those surroundings, and I see Magistrate Ian Weeks nodding appreciably because he knows that I visited him in Rock Hall on more than one occasion, and we knew that your clientele had outgrown the space that you had.
Police Commissioner Tyrone Griffith says the new barracks will allow them to improve their hurricane preparedness plans by having more officers available. He says lawmen in that part of the island have been operating in less than ideal conditions.
District D personnel for many years have not had a home. First, they had to exist in an abandoned building, school building at Holy's Hill for many years. And when that was too dilapidated, they were then moved to co-locate with the personnel at Whole Town, making it extremely difficult for the 2 entities to exist in one small compound. And so we are eternally grateful today to have been afforded such a spanking new building.
The National Insurance Scheme has funded the building, which is part of the overall Citizen Security Facilities Initiative. The NIS has so far spent a total of $33.8 million, with an additional $33.2 million left for other projects. Director Ian Carrington says it was money well spent, and all the projects have been delivered on time and within budget.
I hold my responsibility of Director of National Insurance and my fiduciary responsibility to the insured population in a very high order, because it is their funds that we are essentially utilizing, and I could see no reason why those funds could not be used for the development of our country and to make sure those men and women who every day put their lives on the line and who go way beyond the call of duty to deliver service to this country could operate in good conditions. I don't believe because we work in the public service that we should come in and we have to work in the worst of conditions. Some people have that view. I don't have that view. My view is if you want the best out of people, treat them properly and give them the tools to deliver.
Under the project, in addition to the new Cane Garden facility, the Blackrock Police Station and the old Mill Barracks at Central Police Station were both renovated. The new Police Hastings Worthing Station in Christchurch is set to be opened in a few months' time. Lisa Lord, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Well, we take a pause here, but still to come, the reason for a sewage spill at a Christchurch school. Welcome back. The Barbados Water Authority has identified the reason for the sewage spill at the St. Lawrence Primary School and other areas not affected by sewage issues in the past. Acting General Manager Charles Leslie says the problem was due to a mechanical failure of 2 pumps at the plant. We get more in this report from Sharika Griffith.
The discovery of sewage spilling on the premises of the St. Lawrence Primary School has prompted fears that those challenges facing the South Coast were spreading. But Acting General Manager of the Barbados Water Authority, Charles Leslie, has offered an explanation for the latest development in the saga, which has been described as a national crisis. He says the problem stemmed from the breakdown of 2 of the 4 effluent pumps, which send treated sewage from the plant out to sea.
The system is already charged, so we had backups in areas, in all of the low-lying areas. It wasn't only the St. Lawrence Primary School area, we had in the bamboo areas. We got reports that problems were occurring as far up as Maxwell, but that was anticipated because of the failure of the effluent pumps. We were trying to get some release of the system, by trying to see if we could push the injection wells, and we really accelerated that.
The problem has since been repaired, and as a result, Mr. Leslie says there should be a fall-off in the levels of sewage in the line. He adds that the arrival of a new 10-inch influent pump will help to speed up the process.
That will help to draw the wastewater to the plant so that the effluent pumps then will have more wastewater to pump out to sea. So that will help to draw the levels down a lot faster for us. And hopefully within a couple of days, without that we would have anticipated that it would have taken longer going into the weekend with just the effluent pumps. But with the influent pump now, the new 10-inch, we're hoping that we'll get that draw down a lot faster.
Mr. Leslie also provided an update on the 3 injection wells, which will serve as a bypass while repairs are done on the 4th main leading to the plant. He says casing of the first borehole should be completed soon.
Once that casing is completed, once the grouting is completed, what they're going to do then is use a smaller drill down to the depth that we would want to discharge, which is approximately 150 feet. And they're going to do what they call, they're trying to establish the well, so they're going to be flushing out all the fine materials that would have been created while they were drilling. Once that is done, the well will be ready for the testing that we're asked to do by the regulatory agencies. The contractor is estimating that by Friday that well should be ready to start the testing.
He also reveals that parts needed to repair the force main, which contains several leaks, have already been sourced. Therefore, work can begin once construction of the boreholes has been completed. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
Thanks, Sharika. Well, one way public servants can assure themselves of a wage increase is by working harder. In her opening remarks at the Barbados Workers Union for day two of this year's Week of Excellence, Labour Minister Senator Dr. Esther Bayer-Sakou expressed concern that too often clear objectives are not being set out in the workplace. This, she says, is hindering a proper assessment of workers' performance in the workplace and, as a result, stops them from getting performance-based salary increases.
Targets aren't set, and because targets aren't set, an officer can sit in the office for a whole day and go away satisfied that they've done a day's work when they haven't actually met any of the targets that will move the work of that ministry forward. So it is important that we set targets and that there be encouragement, yes, incentives, performance-based pay, which hopefully would be a wage increase because the performance would be improved so that the wages will increase likewise, which of course means performance appraisal, another thing that we don't like very much in the public sector, and I'm advised that we have similar challenges in the private sector as well.
Now, in response, General Secretary of the Barbados Workers Union, Tony Moore, while agreeing that more productivity is essential to growth in the workplace, is concerned about what she deemed the productivity and inequality nexus. She says while productive workers should receive salary increases for the work they're doing, too often the hardest workers are not on the receiving end.
If we see that people are producing or not producing at the same levels that we are at, but they're being compensated not in line with how we're being compensated, that stirs up within the individual a certain measure of inequality, and then people start to lose their motivation and so start to lose the productive elements or juices that should be flowing within them.
Can you imagine dancing for 7 straight days? That's exactly what Vincentian-born Earl Old George Daniel will be attempting to do in just a few short months. The endurance walker and trained social worker says the dance is intended to raise awareness about two critical issues facing the people of St. Vincent and Barbados.
Given the crime situation in St. Vincent, where I'm from originally, I decided to do a dance to create another conversation as to how we can tackle the crime. I was contacted by, I contacted the Diabetic Association of Barbados through my friend Cecile Marshall, and they were interested in doing a joint project because I learned that Barbados has a similar problem, crime and diabetes, the two things that will kill you. So I'm doing this dance on May 31st to June 7th for 7 days straight.
The 54-year-old, who has broken the Guinness World Record 3 times for the longest walk, will now be attempting to once again have his name recorded in history, this time for the longest solo dance. In 2012, Daniel achieved his goal of dancing for 5.5 days to raise suicide awareness in Canada, but the achievement was not officially recognized because of a time discrepancy. For every hour he dances, Old George will be allowed a 5-minute break. He says while he'll be using several styles of dance, his choice in music will be more selective.
I dance all different genre of music, calypso, soca, reggae, it doesn't matter. My last dance, I danced over 2,000 different tunes. But the rules dictate that you cannot dance to the same tune on the 4-hour period. But this dance will be a special dance because it'll be 98% gospel music I'll be dancing to, because I decided to tackle the situation from a religious angle.
Good luck to him. Finding clothes for premature babies can be quite a challenge. And recognizing this, British resident Iris Treble has donated over 100 hand-knitted suits, blankets and hats to the neonatal intensive care unit at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. She started knitting the pieces as a way to cope with the loss of her husband.
And I decided to do a bit of knitting, and I just got carried away with it, and I just knit. And that's for a bigger baby. That's more or less for a bigger baby. But most of these have got little hats that match, and you've got bigger ones and small.
Meanwhile, consultant in the pediatric department, Dr. Clyde Cave, accepted the donations, noting they would go to many deserving babies.
Babies in the NICU have special needs, but one common thread is that we have to pay special attention to them maintaining their temperature. Premature babies and sick babies have to be kept warm to enable their healing, and therefore they require special clothing, sometimes in special sizes.
Some sad news now. Barbados has recorded its 4th road fatality for the year. Dead is 50-year-old Jeffrey DaCosta Greenidge of 7th Avenue, Back Ivy, St. Michael, who died following injuries sustained in an accident yesterday afternoon. Police say Greenidge, who was riding a bicycle while traveling downhill along University Hill just before 4 when he collided head-on with a car driven by 53-year-old Susan Fitz before striking a van being driven by 30-year-old Eric Allenby of Black Bess St. Peter. He received injuries to the head, right leg and wrist. He was transported to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital where he subsequently died. Police are appealing to anyone who witnessed the accident or can provide any information to assist to contact the District A Police Station at 430-7242 or 430-7246. Well, members of the local media fraternity and the public turned out in their numbers at the Bethel Methodist Church in Bay Street to pay their final respects to a gentle giant, the late Trevor Hollingsworth. The 62-year-old spent over 4 decades in the broadcast media, behind the scenes in the technical department at Starcom Network and Barbados Rediffusion. In his tribute, Robert Morris hailed Mr. Hollingsworth as a committed professional who respected everyone he met.
A very strong person, while respecting and caring for others. He was, and I quote, as was given to me, a man of stature and was not intimidated by anyone. when you are a man of stature, you go by your inner judgment, your inner feelings. You don't pretend. It's difficult for when you're a man of stature to pretend, because you live to certain ideals that you hold. And that is what Trevor represents for me.
While delivering the eulogy, Orlando Gabby Scott spoke of his encounters with Hollingsworth, who was also an avid cook. Mr. Scott says Hollingsworth always aimed for excellence.
Holly was unyielding when it came to having things done professionally. The job had to be done right, whether it was recording or broadcast. He was also fussy about his workspace. You could not just walk into the studio in which Holly was working without his agreement that he was ready for you to enter. In fact, I observed that none of the guards at the front desk, or indeed the receptionist, dared to send up anyone to him for recording without Holly's concurrence. He once told me, because I had walked in the old recording studio, "This is my office, and only I can give you permission to enter."
Welcome back. Well, in Trinidad and Tobago, several high-risk prisoners are being transferred to other facilities. The move was taken in an attempt to curb the gang problem within the country's prisons. We get more in the CTV report.
Prisons Commissioner Jared Wilson has confirmed that some high-risk prisoners are being moved to ease up tensions amongst gang members. This following information received after the last week a number of high-risk prisoners were moved from one prison to another.
We also have gangs, so that in doing that we have to fit people in particular areas to avoid some of the confrontation that is associated with gangs.
While other issues were taken into consideration for the transferring of high-risk prisoners, gang problems, the Commissioner said, is the sole reasons, and added that it remains a major problem in all of the prisons.
Well, yeah, gang is still at the forefront because, you know, it's understood that prison is just a microcosm of the society. So what is happening outside, it also reflects what happens inside.
But not only high-risk prisoners are being transferred to other facilities, it's also the mentally challenged prisoners, the Commissioner said.
We have a bit of shifting around, but it has to do with bringing some sort of structure to how we house inmates. The North Central RHA decided to do this exercise with us, and we started that quite successfully yesterday. What we are trying to do is to bring all those inmates in one particular area where we will have infirmary officers trained in psychiatric nursing and mental health to pay some more attention specifically to those persons.
At present, the Guantanamo and MSP are the primary high-risk facilities among the prisons.
The main opposition National Democratic Congress has laid out its plans for Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique. The NDC believes it is the only party to effectively manage the nation's affairs over the long term.
The party's offering includes safeguarding Grenada's patrimony.
We will respect our heritage. We will not destroy our heritage. We are not going to give command park to any foreigner. We are not going to give quarantine station to any foreigner. We are not going to give Carib's Leap to anybody. We are not going to give Fedon's Camp to anybody.
The implication that the ruling New National Party has jeopardized Grenada's patrimony stems from information the National Democratic Congress received that Cormorant Park was leased for 99 years.
I don't know about Cormorant Park. I'm hearing stories. I don't know whose resolution it is. All I know is the government has committed itself as far as the Cormorant Park concerned. We made our position very clear. If you don't believe the government, I'm sorry. The government is elected to speak on behalf of the people. We have said something, so I don't know that we have to respond to anybody else.
Deputy political leader of the National Democratic Congress, Joseph Andel, has called on the electorate to protect its ultimate endowment, which is the right and responsibility to vote for the best fit candidates.
Let it not be said that we traded away the future of our country for a sheet of plywood. Let it not be said, sisters and brothers, that we sacrifice the future of our country for a fortnight of travel work. Let us embrace decency. Let us embrace the chance for a proper government that will bring true development to the people of Grenada.
And the Antigua and Barbuda Defense Force is receiving assistance from regional counterparts, Barbados and Jamaica, in building and repairing homes in Barbuda. More in this report.
8 homes were completed between Wednesday and Friday of last week. This is a demonstration of the close collaboration among military forces within the RSS and CARICOM. The regional team joined a 10-member ABDF team that is already carrying out work in Barbuda, along with the local contractors on February 18. They consist of carpenters, engineers, masons, and other skilled builders. Focus has been placed on homes with damage categorized as levels 1 and 2, as well as public buildings. Attention is also being given to properties belonging to residents who are teachers, airport staff, among other critical services. Meanwhile, Operations Officer in the Emergency Operations Center, Major Orlando Michael, said cleanup continues on the properties on the Sister Isle.
Belize is working with the United States on policing stolen artifacts. To this effect, the two sides signed a memorandum of understanding concerning the imposition of import restrictions on categories of archaeological material of Belize. We hear more in this report from Channel 5 Belize.
Both governments commit to fight against the looting and trafficking of cultural objects. Acting Chargé d'Affaires Deborah Lingwood says that the renewed agreement for another 5 years would allow for stolen items to be resent to its country of origin.
What we like to do is work with the country to prevent them from being stolen in the first place. So a lot of what we're doing in Belize is education, both of law enforcement but also of communities, so that communities themselves want to protect these artifacts, that they understand the importance of it, that they don't just see them as something they can lead a tourist to steal, but it's something that they want to protect because it's their cultural heritage and it's more value to stay in place.
These continuous support and initiatives are something that we look forward to in moving on in protecting our cultural heritage, in making sure that we are well aware and having our public and the people of Belize and the people of the United States well aware of what is happening within our borders and crossing our borders. This, as we say, is a continuing beginning, if you could use that term. A very important signing for us to make sure that we have the relationship with the U.S., do the training with the customs, the border management, so they will be able to identify our artifacts going across our borders. And so the countries that we work with will be able to identify our artifacts that are coming into their countries.
While prevention through education campaigns and trainings is a priority, Lingwood says that the MOU further allows for U.S. to repatriate cultural property to Belize. In fact, today's event saw 11 pieces confiscated during the raid in the U.S., returned and handed over to Dr. Ian Morrison, director of the Institute of Archaeology.
Well, a glimpse into the world of sports is just ahead with Sean Green, but first, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Anti-doping rule violations number 6. Doping is defined as the possession of a banned substance and/or method. This fact is brought to you compliments the National Anti-Doping Commission.